At first, it looks like a scandal, then it starts to look like a takeover. Richard Sterling's public betrayal is not driven by passion alone, but by ambition, inheritance, and the ruthless logic of a man determined to build a new dynasty no matter who he destroys. As Claire rises from humiliation, the story expands into a high-stakes battle over family power, public image, and a corporate empire that may not survive the fire she is about to unleash.
It was at the Innovate Summit, 7 months into her pregnancy, that her husband's private life went viral. He wasn't just a speaker, he was the bombshell news. During the live-streamed Q&A, he announced his affair with a brilliant coder he was mentoring, and that she was also pregnant. Liam Blackwood was certain his wife, Olivia, couldn't survive the humiliation. He never guessed a rival CEO would help her fight back. Nor did he predict the corporate war she'd launch, the day she'd lose it all again, and the fury that would empower her to dismantle his tech empire. This is Olivia Davenport's story, a woman who endured public ruin 3 times and learned to wield the fire. A blinding stage light washed out the auditorium. Olivia felt all the air leave her lungs. Her hand instinctively shielded her stomach, where their baby kicked sharply, echoing the sudden chaos. "What is he saying?" Olivia murmured, sure she was mishearing. The collective gasp of San Francisco's tech elite felt like a cold shock. Something was terribly wrong. She'd felt the distance grow for months, the endless late-night coding sessions, how Liam's eyes were always glued to his screen, never to her. A blogger pointed a phone at him. "Liam? For the Valley Chronicle?" he yelled. His gaze scanned the shocked faces and landed on hers. For one heart-stopping moment, the world paused. He commanded the stage, a tech titan trapped in his own reveal. The city's venture capital community held its breath. The ambient conference music droned on, a sterile soundtrack to her life's demolition. Olivia saw her husband's face, loved for 6 years, harden into a stranger's cruel smirk. "Is this some kind of marketing stunt?" she whispered to her father. "Did you know about this?" Liam's voice boomed through the speakers like a system alert. The room's energy died, chilled by an invisible frost. "Chloe and I are building a new future," Liam stated. Olivia let out a sharp, broken laugh. A twisted joke, Liam. Hilarious. "That is the announcement." His voice was flat, detached, like he was discussing server uptime. "Our merger is terminated, Olivia." His phone had been vibrating non-stop. She saw him share a quick, triumphant glance with someone off stage, a victory she was excluded from. "Liam, we're at a conference," Olivia pleaded, her hand over their unborn child. "My family is here, our investors. I am 7 months pregnant. This can't be happening." "It is." Liam's eyes finally met hers, no longer a source of comfort, but a terrifying void. "Chloe is pregnant too. She's carrying my son, and my choice is made." The words echoed in the massive hall, a final verdict. Olivia heard the sounds, but her brain wouldn't process their meaning. Chloe. The name was legendary in AI circles. Chloe Corbin, a ruthless, brilliant programmer who had dazzled Silicon Valley. 28 years old, with sharp code and a smile that landed 9-figure funding. The woman who was always at the same industry events, standing a little too near Olivia's husband. "What are you talking about?" Olivia's question was lost in the rising clamor. "Chloe," Liam said, as if the name were sacred. "We have been partners for 2 years. She gets my vision. She challenges me. And she is giving me the air I need. 2 years?" The number hammered inside Olivia's head. 2 years of lies. 2 years with a man who was building a separate life in secret. "But I'm having your baby," Olivia's voice cracked. "Our child. After all the clinics, all the pain. That pregnancy was a legacy plan," Liam announced, ensuring every reporter heard. A continuity agreement I assumed was being executed correctly. Clearly there was a failure in the protocol. Executed correctly. The corporate jargon was a stunning blow. What did he mean? She looked at her husband and finally saw the man he truly was. How had she missed the saboteur behind the tech visionary? Liam Blackwood was engineered for acquisition. The heir to a Silicon Valley dynasty, he learned that emotion was a bug, not a feature. Feelings created friction. People were assets to be leveraged or divested. His powerful mother groomed him for dominance, while his father only praised his market share. By 20, Liam knew love was a transaction and marriage a strategic merger. The fastest path to power was to simulate connection, extract its value, then cut it loose without sentiment. Olivia had been his shrewdest acquisition. Her old-world family name lent his aggressive startup the credibility it needed. She was the perfect interface for a man who felt only ambition. For a brief time, early on, he nearly let himself feel something genuine. He patched that vulnerability. It was a liability. It was inefficient. So he optimized his life on the cold logic that everyone, including his wife and unborn son, was ultimately disposable. I don't understand. Tears streamed down her face. Liam, please, whatever this is, let's leave. We can talk about this. There is nothing to discuss. Liam beckoned to Chloe, who walked toward him through the stunned audience. The motion was a public verdict. Our marriage was seed funding. Your family's connections got me into the rooms I needed. You served your purpose. Her hands trembled as she watched his new life join him on stage. Her fingers went numb. Liam, don't! Olivia was sobbing now, her private agony a spectacle for 1,000 streaming devices. You're destroying me. Our son? That is no longer my problem. He took Chloe's hand. The door to their life together was officially closed. Camera flashes erupted, a blinding storm searing the scene into her mind. Innovate or be deprecated, he murmured as security led her away. Frankly, your outcome is irrelevant. Olivia staggered back, her knees buckling. A savage pain tore through her, deeper than a broken heart. The crowd's stares felt like a physical assault. Her father grabbed her arm, steering her out of the main hall. Wait, my clutch, my phone, she begged. Liam, wait, I have nothing. On the giant monitors, she saw him posing with Chloe, his hand on her stomach. He was smiling, looking like a man who'd just secured a monopoly, not one who'd just publicly destroyed his pregnant wife. His black self-driving car pulled silently to the entrance. The electric motor hummed as Liam sped into the foggy night. The taillights were 2 indifferent red dots. Then they vanished. Olivia stood on the sidewalk, the damp San Francisco air chilling her gown, leaving her shivering and alone. This isn't happening. The thought was a prayer to reverse the last 10 minutes. He wouldn't do this. It's a nightmare. In a moment his car would reappear. He'd be back. But the street stayed empty. There was only the fog and the sound of her own frantic breathing. He was gone. The truth slammed into her, and she collapsed onto the cold concrete. She stumbled through the dense fog, the hem of her designer gown snagging on the brush. Her mind was a chaotic loop, replaying Liam's cold smile. The project files on his laptop were never just for work. They were the code for a life he was building with Chloe. Her hands held her belly, trying to shield their son. The damp chill stole her breath. She had to keep going, for the tiny life unaware of this betrayal. Just a little farther. She had to survive. Her only mission now was his protection. The fog swirled, erasing her footprints, consuming her in the gray void. The absurdly expensive heels, perfect for the conference, were now useless weights. A deep cold crept into her bones. The pashmina, a gift from him, was no match for the coastal wind. It was all an illusion, just like their life together. Then, a light pierced the mist. A warm amber glow, a signal in the gloom, a house. Fierce, desperate hope drove her onward. Her muscles burned, her lungs ached with each frigid gasp. The light became a modern home nestled in the hills, smoke trailing from its chimney. It was the opposite of her own cold, glass-walled house. It seemed solid, real. She fought her way up the long, winding driveway in a final, agonizing effort. She sensed the surrender creeping in. A strange, quiet heat spread through her limbs, nature's final, gentle lie. The desire to simply curl up in the mud and sleep was a siren's call, just to the light. She reached the bottom step of the porch before her legs failed. She dragged herself the last few feet. The heavy cedar door had a forged iron latch. Her fingers were numb, useless. Claire slumped against the planks, the rough wood a last anchor to the world. So this is the end. She had tried to run. She fought for her son. "I'm so sorry, little guy," she breathed. Mommy tried. As the world dissolved, she heard a deadbolt turn and a man's sharp, worried voice slice through the rain. "Claire? What on earth happened to you?" A steadying arm pulled her out of the storm. She registered the solid warmth of her brother's frame an instant before everything went dark. She woke to the radiating heat of a fireplace and the comforting weight of a heavy wool blanket. Kind hands were rubbing the life back into her own. "Easy now. You're here. You're safe." The voice was a low, familiar rumble, the opposite of Richard's clipped, demanding tone. This was the sound of home. Claire's eyes opened to a flickering view of knotty pine and firelight. "You're safe now." Her brother's face swam into view, his expression etched with deep concern. "David?" Her voice was a brittle croak. "You're at my place," he said, pulling the blanket higher. "You collapsed on my porch a minute ago." Maria, his wife, approached with a steaming mug. Claire tried to push herself up, but the cabin tilted. A wave of nausea hit her, and she fell back into the deep armchair. "Whoa, easy there. You're in shock." His worried gaze said it all. Her brother cared more than her husband ever had. "The baby? Is he okay?" A cold dread clenched her stomach, which felt as hard as a river stone. "I haven't felt him move." "Hang on," David said, returning with a small, handheld device. "Maria used this. Just listen." He gently moved her hand to the right spot. With a trembling fingers, Claire put the earbuds in. A rapid, urgent pulsing filled her head, a steady, powerful rhythm. "He's there," she sobbed, the relief a tidal wave. "He's okay. He's a fighter," David said gently, like his mom. Maria returned with the hot tea. "The guest room is all set for you." David was built like a man who worked with his hands, broad and solid. As Maria helped her sit up, the room came into focus. It was a large, open space anchored by a massive stone fireplace. All the furniture was handcrafted from wood, and the shelves were filled with beloved books. This was a home, not a designer showroom. The air smelled of rain-soaked cedar. "Drink," Maria insisted. The warm chamomile felt like life itself spreading through her. "Thank you," she rasped. Her voice was a bit more steady. "Thank you both. I had nowhere else to turn." "This is always where you can turn," David said, his voice firm. "The creek's flooded out the main road. The whole area is cut off." "I need to call someone," Claire said, panic rising anew. "I left without my phone, my wallet, anything." "The landline is still working," David said. "Cell service is down, but you can make a call." Claire just looked at the old phone. Richard had carefully pruned away her friends. She had no one left but the brother she'd let him push away. "Tell me what he did." David's voice was low, controlled. "How do you end up here in a gale, 7 months pregnant and wearing a cocktail dress?" Claire glanced at her ruined silk dress. It was Richard. His name was a poison. He was at a tech conference in San Francisco. She drew a shaky breath. "I was watching the keynote, and I saw her, Sophie, wearing his gift. Then the photos from the after-party hit a tech blog." The silence in the house was deafening. The fire crackled. The storm raged. "He's with your sister." David's voice was sharp as steel. "Your husband is with Sophie while you're carrying his son." "Yes," Claire whispered. The public humiliation was its own kind of agony. "That's not just betrayal. That's monstrous," David said, his words hard and precise. The tears she'd been fighting finally fell, hot and silent, for a life that was now utterly destroyed. Maria was there in an instant, her arms a sudden comfort. "Oh, you poor dear." Maria's voice was laced with anger. "What kind of man does that? What kind of sister would do this to you?" Claire sobbed into her shoulder, mourning the man she thought she knew, and the family he had just burned to the ground. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I'm a mess. I'm invading your home." "You have nothing to be sorry for," David said, his back to them, as he stared into the storm. "What they did was an abomination. You're not a mess. You're a survivor." She saw her brother offering her strength when all she felt was weak. "Oh, why are you being so kind?" she asked, her voice torn. "After I let him push you away?" David turned from the window, his gaze locking with hers. "Because you're my sister. Blood is more real than spreadsheets. You're my family." The past didn't matter now. "Maria has the guest room ready. You're staying," he stated. "The bridge is washed out. Nobody is leaving this valley for a couple of days at least." "I can't impose," Claire began. "The bridge is gone." David's tone left no room for argument. "There is no other place for you to go, so you will stay. You'll rest, and you will let us look after you and your son." She had no fight left. Her world was in fragments, and her baby needed a safe place. "Thank you," she whispered. "I can never repay you." "Repay me by giving that boy a good life," David said. "Make what Richard did completely insignificant." He walked toward the kitchen. "Don't mind him," Maria said softly. "He's just sick with anger on your behalf. It shattered him when you married Richard and just vanished," Maria said quietly, as they went up the stairs. The walls were covered in old family photos. "How did you two meet?" Claire asked. "After he left the corporate world," Maria smiled. "He wanted to build things that last, not just quarterly reports." She paused at a solid pine door. "This house used to be so full of noise," she said wistfully, "especially when you visited. It got so quiet after you stopped coming around." She opened the door, revealing a room filled with simple warmth. The walls were painted a soft buttercup yellow, and in the corner stood a beautiful hand-carved wooden cradle. Rich, faux fur blankets were draped over a bed made from a massive piece of driftwood. A wall of glass perfectly framed the furious motion of the blizzard. "The bathroom is through there," Elena gestured. "Let me find you one of Mrs. Montgomery's robes. You're about the same size. Or were, before the little one. I'll get something warm." Her smile was a small comfort, a maternal kindness Claire hadn't felt in years. "You get some rest. Dr. Chin is on his way. Things always look better in the morning." Elena slipped out, closing the door quietly. Claire stood alone in the lavish room, a captive in a 5-star prison, abandoned by the man she had married. Stranded in a remote lodge by a snowstorm, 32 weeks pregnant with a son her husband wanted to erase. She moved to the window, feeling the storm's vibration through the thick pane. Outside, the snow and wind were a violent white blur. She had to say the betrayal aloud to make it solid. "I didn't imagine this." Her breath fogged the glass. "He actually did it. Richard really left me here and cut the satellite phone. He looked right at me and just left. He felt absolutely nothing." The baby kicked, a sharp, insistent jab. Claire wrapped her arms around her belly, her breath catching. "Okay, little one, it's just us now. Your father is gone. The life he built for us was a lie. But we are here, we are warm, and we will figure this out. I don't know how, but I promise you, we will." The baby kicked again, a firmer, more confident thump, a silent promise back. Claire managed a faint smile, the first in what felt like a lifetime. Maybe they could. The knock came at 7:05 a.m. Exactly. Claire knew because she'd been watching the glowing numbers on the clock all night. Sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's calm, detached face. So she watched the hours tick by. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The world outside the window was a vortex of snow. "It's not locked," she called out, her voice unused. The door opened to reveal a man in his early 50s, his graying hair lending him an air of quiet competence. His face was etched with experience and compassion, and his eyes had a steady quality that missed nothing. He carried an old leather medical bag that looked like it had seen its share of winter storms. "I'm Dr. Chen." He set the bag down. "I managed to get the snowcat up the service road. I really hope this qualifies as an emergency." Despite everything, a small smile touched Claire's lips. It is. More than you can imagine. Good. Dr. Chen pulled out a stethoscope. Let's check on your little passenger. Elena mentioned you had a difficult night. That's a mild way of putting it. His examination was calm and methodical. He took her blood pressure twice. He measured her pulse for a complete minute, a far cry from the rushed city appointments. Her temperature was fine, and he carefully found the baby's heartbeat, leaving the monitor in place for a long, reassuring moment. How far along are you? 32 weeks and 3 days. And you were left in this situation for how long? A few hours, maybe more? I stopped paying attention to the time. Doctor. Dr. Sharma adjusted the chair. She took Olivia's wrist, her fingers lightly finding the pulse. Her focused quietness stirred a fresh wave of panic in Olivia's chest. What is it? Olivia's voice trembled. Is my son all right? His heart rate is up, Dr. Sharma said, her expression serious. It's not dangerous yet, but after such a shock, we must be cautious about fetal distress. What does that mean? Our main worry is premature labor, she explained, meeting Olivia's eyes. A significant emotional shock can trigger contractions. I have to be direct. You might go into labor within the next 2 days. If complications arise, you need a hospital, and that's not an option right now. A high-risk birth requires a neonatal unit, specialists, and a surgical staff, not a remote vineyard estate. Dr. Sharma let out a soft sigh. I've handled standard births almost anywhere, but this is far from standard. Olivia gazed at the heavy oak beams above as her reality fractured. The main highway, she whispered. Is it clear? A mudslide has the pass closed for at least another day. After that, emergency vehicles get first access, so you'd lose another half day before they'd let you pass. Dr. Sharma's tone gentled. Realistically, we're looking at 48 hours, best case scenario, to get you to a proper medical center. And if labor starts before then, I will use every ounce of my expertise to deliver your son safely. I have medication that can potentially delay it. I have a comprehensive emergency kit and 30 years of experience. She gave her hand a comforting pat. I'm explaining this so you understand our situation. The most beneficial thing for you is to stay calm and get some rest. Allow your body to stabilize. What if he needs more? We'll confront that if we must. I've delivered babies in much tougher conditions. It's not ideal, but it's not a tragedy. Dr. Sharma rose, packing her equipment with fluid efficiency. For now, you are not to leave this bed. Drink water and eat what Maria brings you. And I want you to call me for any reason at all. The slightest twinge, a shift in his movements, anything. Understand? Yes, I understand. At the door, Dr. Sharma paused. Your husband Julian reached out to me. He gave me his version of events. Her voice hardened. I've been the doctor for the families in this valley for a very long time. I've witnessed bitter divorces and family conflicts. But what he's doing... She just shook her head. That is a rare and methodical cruelty. He meant for me to be isolated here. Olivia's voice was hollow, devoid of feeling. Voicing it made the nightmare real. He almost got his wish. Dr. Sharma looked at her directly. I have seen people at their breaking point. I recognize that expression. You were there, Olivia. A couple more hours of that stress, and this would have been a catastrophic emergency. But I am still here. You are still here, and that little boy is a fighter, just like his mother. No matter what happens, you've shown your strength. Dr. Sharma offered a small, reassuring smile. Whatever that man said to you, whatever narrative he created about you being fragile, he was lying. You endured a betrayal that would break most people. That is not weakness. That is strength. The door clicked shut. Olivia lay in the vast bed, concentrating on her breathing, in and out, trying to soothe her racing heart, to undo the knots of tension in her body. Her son was at risk. There was no hospital, only a doctor and a four-wheel drive. And outside, a storm was brewing. If something went wrong, she could lose him, here in this gorgeous cage. And Julian was in New York with his associate, Chloe, likely toasting their new life without giving her a second thought. At that moment, her laptop on the bedside table, which was linked to the estate's intermittent satellite connection, chimed with a new notification the sound cutting through the stillness of the room. Olivia was in her room with Maria, who was urging her to have some soup. Her stomach was a solid knot of anxiety that refused food, but the housekeeper insisted. "You must eat, ma'am, for the baby. He needs your strength." The email was a marketing report from a PR firm she didn't know. Before she could ignore it, the room's phone rang. Maria answered it. Olivia saw the housekeeper's expression change from polite to puzzled, then to a cold, contained fury. "One moment," she said, her voice strained. "Let me see if she's available." She offered the phone to Olivia, her eyes communicating the urgency. "It's a man named David. He says he's your brother and has been trying to contact you all day. He sounds desperate." "David?" Olivia grabbed the receiver. "Hello?" "Olivia. Thank God. I was afraid you were—" David's voice was a torrent of sheer relief. "I've been calling everyone. I called Julian's new company, the estate management, everywhere. They kept telling me you were on a wellness retreat and unreachable. Where are you? What is happening? Where is Julian?" "I'm fine," Olivia's voice broke, contradicting her claim. "I'm safe. I'm at the Napa estate. Julian brought me here. For a rest." "A rest?" "Olivia, what is he talking about? He's posting old photos of you two from Italy, calling it a surprise baby moon. He told my secretary you had a breakdown from stress and had to be taken somewhere quiet. Is that true?" "He's lying." The words were flat and cold. "He brought me here yesterday. He told me Chloe, his head of PR, was also pregnant, and that his family line needed to be secured." A heavy, cold silence filled the line. Olivia could hear David's breathing, tight and controlled. Then his composure shattered. "I will ruin him." David's voice was absolute iron. "I am going to find that manipulative, soulless snake, and I will tear down his entire empire brick by brick. Then I will drown him in litigation. Where is he? Is he with her?" "With Chloe, the PR executive having his other child. I know." David's tone was now icy and deliberate, more frightening than his anger. "I know all about Chloe, and much more. I started digging when his office stonewalled me. I made a few inquiries. I found the financial statements he hid from you." "What did you find?" "You might want to sit down for this, Olivia. Just tell me." David took a sharp breath, his voice turning frigid. "Julian emptied your joint portfolio this morning. He transferred the entire amount, nearly $5 million, to an offshore account." Olivia clutched the headboard as the world began to spin. That horrifying sensation of the ground disappearing returned. "The brownstone," David's voice was unforgiving. "That beautiful Boston home you poured your heart into. Your name was never on the title. He had you sign the closing documents as a corporate signatory, not a co-owner. It's a common fraud scheme. The partner thinks they're buying a home, but they're just witnessing the transaction, signing away all claims. That's impossible. I was there. You signed the witness line. It's positioned right next to the owner's signature on purpose, made to deceive someone who has complete trust in their partner." David's voice finally broke with sorrow. "Liv, I am so sorry, but it's much worse than that." "How could it be worse?" "He completed the sale of the brownstone last week before he took you to Napa for this trip. The entire deal was funneled through a shell company. He intended to wipe out your entire existence in a single weekend." Olivia was speechless, finding it hard to breathe. The magnificent bedroom suddenly felt like a tomb. "There's more." David paused, his voice thick with rage and sorrow. "Chloe wasn't some new fling. They have been together for almost 6 years, since before he even knew you. I found hidden bank accounts, properties under her name, joint travel records. He was constructing an entirely separate life with her while he was using you. 6 years. The number echoed in Olivia's mind. 6 years in the same bed. 6 years planning what she believed was their shared future. 6 years with a man who was carefully plotting her destruction. But this last part, David's voice cracked. "Oh, Liv, this is the most vicious part. Do you remember when Dad's charity was on the verge of failing last year? And an anonymous grant saved it? That was Julian. It was a scheme to convince you to move your inheritance into a joint fund that he managed. He contacted my firm today to retract the donation, alleging significant financial mismanagement. He's attempting to smear our father's legacy to cover his own tracks. The phone fell from Olivia's hand, striking the stone floor with a sharp crack. David's voice was a faint sound coming from the dropped receiver. Olivia, Liv, can you hear me? Please say something. But she was paralyzed. Dr. Sharma was with her instantly, carefully helping her into a nearby chair. A glass of water was held to her trembling mouth. Breathe now, my dear, the doctor urged. Whatever you've heard, you must breathe for the baby. Focus on your child. Olivia's lungs finally complied, taking in ragged, painful breaths. Each one felt like a surrender. Julian hadn't just been unfaithful. He had orchestrated her complete ruin from the beginning. Her career, her wealth, her home. It was all a detailed set he had built to keep her happy, a minor character in his grander plot. She had believed every lie, held onto every hollow promise, and loved a man who viewed her as a problem to be discarded. Dr. Sharma picked up the phone. Her conversation with David was quick and professional as she took down a number, vowing to call him back. She sat with Olivia in the quiet living room, holding her hand as the wind howled outside. And in that silent, shattered moment, something fundamental inside Olivia finally broke. The cramps started as the sun set. Elena dismissed them as stress, maybe false labor. She'd had similar pains for weeks, fleeting aches that always faded. But these intensified, sharpened, and pulled her under. Liam, her husband's business partner, had a doctor on the phone just moments after Elena cried out. Less than 5 minutes apart, Elena gripped a countertop as a contraction racked her body. This is wrong. It's too soon. A terrible shock can signal the body it's time, ready or not. Dr. Chen checked the baby's heart with a stethoscope. A little fast, but strong. We need to watch this. See if she settles down. Can you stop them? We can try, she said softly. We will do everything we possibly can. They guided Elena to the master bedroom, which Dr. Chen had already prepared with clean sheets and medical kits. Liam brought in more towels, his face tense, but his movements steady. He acted with the quiet competence of a man accustomed to emergencies. What else? He asked the doctor. Just stay here. I may need your help. Her lawyer, Miss Vance, was still driving, hours out, carrying a drive that held a man's ruin. And Elena was in the middle of it, 33 weeks pregnant and terrified in a near stranger's home. If I don't survive this, she gasped, voice tight with pain, you have to promise me something. Make sure Vance destroys Julian. For what he did. He can't get away with this. You're going to survive. Liam's voice was rock solid. You are too resilient to give up now. But if I don't, promise me. He took her hand. My wife wouldn't have sent you to us just to let you fail. That wasn't her way. Elena almost smiled before another wave of pain hit. Just promise, she pleaded. Promise my daughter will know her mother fought for her. I swear it. Liam's eyes were wet. But you are going to be the one to tell her that story. You're staying. The following hours were a blur of pain and determination. The labor was erratic. It would pause for an hour, offering Elena's exhausted body a brief reprieve. Then it would return, every 5 minutes, fierce and unyielding. Dr. Chen used what she had to monitor them, a blood pressure cuff, her stethoscope, and sterilized tools. The labor is stalled, she said late that night. That's good. Your body is fighting for the baby. Let it fight. How long can it go on? It is impossible to know. Hours, maybe another day. Every single hour we gain is a win for your daughter. Dr. Chen listened to the fetal heartbeat. This one is a warrior, she murmured. Just like her mother. Liam never left the room. He sat by the window, a silent guardian, close enough to help, but distant enough to offer space. He did not sleep. He simply watched. You don't have to stay, Elena told him during a quiet moment. This could be a while. I am not going anywhere, he replied, his tone final. When my Sarah was dying, I sat with her for 72 hours. I listened to every breath. I held her hand when she took her last one. That must have been so hard. It was, he said, and it was the most important thing I have ever done. His eyes found hers in the low light. Nobody should have to face a battle like this alone. Whatever happens tonight, you will not be alone. Hot tears slid down Elena's cheeks. She had been left so many times. By her parents, gone too soon. By Julian, whose affection was a lie. By friends she'd alienated for a man who wanted her isolated. And now this man, a stranger grieving his own loss, was vowing to stay. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." A small smile touched his lips. "Thank me when your daughter is in your arms, Julian Thorne is facing fraud charges, and you have reclaimed your life. Is that even possible?" "Yes." His certainty felt like a physical presence. "I see what you've already survived. I believe you're capable of anything." At 6 in the morning, the real labor began. The baby was coming, ready or not. Dr. Chen moved with professional calm, giving quiet instructions to Miss Vance, who had finally arrived and become her assistant. "Shift your hips, ice chips, breathe, a tiny dose of pain relief that barely touched the edges. The baby's ready," Dr. Chen said after one more check. "She's in position. It is time to work." "It's too early," Elena's voice shook with fear. "I'm only 32 weeks. 32 weeks is early, but it is not a disaster. Babies born now do very well with the right care." The doctor looked right at her. "I have delivered hundreds of preemies. Most of them are now complaining about their taxes. Your daughter will be just fine." Another contraction slammed into her. Elena cried out, her fingers digging into Liam's hand. "Breathe," he said. "Look at me. We'll count. 1, 2, 3. His voice was her only anchor in the painful storm. She held his gaze, matching the rhythm of his counting. "Good," Dr. Chen said, as the pain receded. "You are progressing very quickly. This young lady is in a hurry to meet you." The next hour was a primal blur. Push, breathe, rest. Push. Elena operated on sheer will. Her entire world narrowed to this single urgent purpose. And then, the cord. It's wrapped around the neck. Those words sliced through the fog. Elena saw a flash of concern in the doctor's eyes before it was masked. Dr. Chen's voice was a firm anchor. "I need you to be perfectly still for me, Elena." Her hands were a fast, expert blur, making unseen adjustments that felt like a terrifying pressure inside her. Panic was a physical thing, stealing her breath. "One more push," the doctor commanded, "with all you have left." "Now," Elena screamed, channeling her final bit of strength. A sudden, profound silence filled the room, a terrible quiet where a baby's cry should have been, and then a sharp, furious wail cut through the tension, the most wonderful sound Elena had ever heard. "It is a girl," Dr. Chen said, her voice thick with emotion. "A perfect, healthy, and very loud little girl." They laid the baby on Elena's chest, so small and warm. Elena stared at her daughter, at the dark fuzz of hair and tiny waving fists. "Hello," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. "Hello, Maya Rose. I am your mom. I will always, always keep you safe." The baby's eyes blinked open, a deep, knowing shade of navy blue, already shining, with a powerful spirit. "She's a miracle." Liam's voice was full of wonder. "A total miracle." "Maya Rose Thorne," Elena said quietly. "Maya, for my grandmother, and Rose, for the new life she is." Julian made a strange, choked noise, half laugh, half sob. He reached a trembling hand toward the infant's face. "My mother would have loved that," he said. Dr. Chen gave them a moment before speaking. 6 pounds, 1 ounce, she reported. "A bit early, but she's a fighter. Her vitals look great. After all of this, she's a little miracle. A true Chicago miracle," Liam said from the doorway, his own eyes shining. Arrived just in time. 2 days later, as the city hummed outside, Elena's entire world was that quiet hospital room. The nurses felt the change in atmosphere when Julian entered, his face a careful blank mask. "Mrs. Thorne." Liam stood up as Julian neared the armchair where Elena was sitting. "I'm Liam Hayes. This is a private matter. We have some disturbing information concerning your husband." "I have my own information," Elena said, her eyes fixed on the city view, with Maya sleeping on her chest. "I was finally ready to tell my lawyer everything." Elena described every detail, finding the hidden credit card statement while organizing nursery receipts, Julian's phone lighting up with texts he always angled away. The moment she Googled the charge for a custom pendant and saw his other life, She recounted finding the jeweler's social media, the videos of a trip to Aspen, the entire digital trail of his affair. She explained the shell companies he'd used to siphon money from his firm for years. She told them how he'd convinced her to leave her design firm, isolating her and making her dependent while he funded another woman. When she was done, her lawyer was grim. "This is a textbook dissipation of marital assets," Miss Vance stated. "Calculated financial fraud. He made you completely vulnerable. And he did it while you were pregnant with his child. Can you prove it? We have the bank statements and the hard drive from his secondary laptop. He never knew I found it. His private flight records match her Instagram posts to the day. The wire transfers show a clear, undeniable pattern." The lawyer's expression was hard. "The evidence is airtight. We have the petition drafted and ready. He's been posting pictures, calling me his everything. We saw them. Those posts will not play well in court," Miss Vance said. "The digital trail completely contradicts his public story. He claimed he was on business. The server logs and bank records prove he was financing an affair. What's next? We serve him with the papers. He's giving the keynote address at the Investors Gala at the Drake Hotel. Our server will be waiting for him there." Miss Vance stood up. "I've been a family law attorney for 20 years, Mrs. Thorne. I have seen some terrible betrayals, but what your husband did—" She just shook her head. "That is a unique level of cruelty. You were incredibly brave to uncover this, and we will make sure he is held fully accountable." Julian Thorne was served that evening. Liam was the one who told Elena, his own sources having confirmed the papers were delivered. "The takedown happened mid-takeover bid," Alex explained, his voice grim. "Julian was on a live-streamed panel when the news broke. His face went viral instantly. He was blindsided. The initial charges are conspiracy and corporate endangerment. More are coming after the lab results are final." Alex's smile was thin. "His father's PR firm is in damage control, but you can't spin this. The data trail is undeniable." For a moment, Isla felt hope. Julian was exposed. The proof was solid. Justice seemed real. She held her son, Leo, thinking the nightmare was over. She was profoundly mistaken. The Croft family's counterattack landed precisely 7 days later. Isla was recovering at Alex's Bayfront condo, healing and caring for her newborn. Leo had just fallen asleep when Alex entered, his expression tight, holding a crisp legal folio. "A messenger just delivered this," Alex said, his voice flat. "From a firm on Market Street. Sterling and Dunn." Isla's fingers felt numb as she took the portfolio. She knew the name. They were the fixers San Francisco's titans called when morals were inconvenient. Their job was to make ugly problems vanish. She broke the seal, her mind failing to grasp the words. "What is it?" Alex asked, his features hardening. "Isla, you look like you've seen a ghost. Talk to me." "They want him," Isla whispered, her voice empty. "Julian's parents. They're filing for full custody of Leo." "On what grounds?" "They're claiming I'm mentally unfit, a danger to my own son." Her hands trembled, rattling the legal papers. "They have reports from psychiatrists I've never met, and a statement from Chloe swearing I was unstable my entire pregnancy." Her voice finally broke. Alex snatched the file, his eyes blazing as he scanned the pages. His jaw was set. "This is a fabrication," he said, his voice cold as steel. "Hired shrinks and perjury. This is how the wealthy write their own history." "Can they succeed? Can they take my son from me?" "They can light a match," Alex said, his gaze hard as flint. "But I will be the one to bring the flood." Isla could feel the cold dread in his eyes. The Crofts had limitless power. Their lawyers manufactured reality for a living. The city's influential were in their debt. And she was a nobody. No job, no funds, only the kind friend who offered her shelter. "It's worse," Alex said, his tone low. "They're petitioning to have your entire case thrown out. They allege you forged the financial records in a jealous fury over Chloe. That is insane. The server logs prove. Their tech expert will testify it was a sophisticated deepfake. Their paid sources will claim you were the one having an affair. They are framing you as a scorned woman, out for revenge because he left her. But it's all lies. To them, truth is just a business expense. Alex put the documents down. All that matters is the story they sell to the court. With their money, any lie can seem true. Isla sank into the chair, clutching Leo, who slept on, unaware of the war just declared over his life. What do I do? Isla asked, her voice barely there. I have no way to fight them. You have me. Alex met her eyes. You have my support, my network, and my lawyers, who are the most feared litigators in the state. His conviction was absolute. They want a skirmish. We will give them a war. Why? This is too much to ask. It will consume you, cost a fortune. You barely know me. Because it's the right thing to do, Alex said, his voice softening. Because you came into my life when I thought everything was a zero-sum game. Because watching you fight for your son reminds me of what's important. He gently stroked Leo's tiny hand. And because this boy deserves a mother who adores him, not grandparents who view him as a future dynasty. Tears fell down Isla's face. Thank you, she whispered. I can never repay you. Repay me by winning, Alex interrupted, standing. I have some calls to place. The hearing is in 3 days. We have to prepare for a battle. The law firm felt cold and powerful. Glass walls showed views of the city, with stark furniture and the silent energy of expensive ruthlessness. A long, empty conference table felt like an impending battlefield. Isla sat with her new attorney, Sophia Chen, a woman Alex had on retainer. Sophia was a legend, known for taking down the city's tech empires in court. Isla prayed she was worth her reputation. Across the bay, Julian Croft's parents, Harrison and Catherine, were orchestrating their next move. Harrison, a crueler version of his son, exuded an air of total control. Catherine was a statue of inherited wealth, draped in designer armor. They were flanked by corporate lawyers, predators who saw this as an asset acquisition, not a family matter. Julian himself was hidden away, his family's team managing the public relations catastrophe, and Chloe was there, performing the role of the devoted partner, a hand on her stomach, a vision of calculated innocence that made Isla's blood boil. Let us begin. The judge's voice was sharp. She addressed the court. We have an emergency motion for custody of Leo Croft, filed by his paternal grandparents. They request guardianship while charges are pending against the father, Julian Croft. She looked to Sophia. Their motion alleges, my client is mentally unstable, but they offer no independent medical proof for this claim. Your Honor, the other lawyer interjected, we have statements from 3 renowned psychologists. I have reviewed them, the judge stated, and I see they all sit on the board of the Croft Foundation. The lawyer's smirk was steady. Our experts have sterling credentials. Their impartiality is my concern, not their resumes. The judge then looked at Sophia. Miss Chen, your response. Sophia stood, her presence filling the room. Your Honor, my client demands a full evaluation by a court-appointed psychiatrist. She has nothing to hide. She is a loving mother who survived a deliberate attempt on her child's life and now faces a second assault. The petitioners claim my client is unstable. Your Honor, the petitioners are creating a work of fiction. Sophia's tone was frigid, and we can prove it. Her aide handed out tablets. This shows a pattern of Julian Croft's abuse. Financial manipulation, isolation, and poisoning her prenatal vitamins to cause a miscarriage. Objection? The other side yelled. Those are baseless claims. They are documented facts, Sophia replied. We have the toxicology reports. We also have the compounding pharmacist's sworn testimony. These lab results confirm the second opinion Isla obtained from a specialist. Your Honor, this is a calculated attack on her character. Their client is trying to take a newborn from his mother to avoid consequences for his own criminal behavior. Sophia's voice was like steel. To be clear, Julian Croft tried to force a miscarriage. When that failed, his family began a smear campaign to ruin her name. They purchased fake medical reports, and now they ask this court to reward their fraud by giving them an infant who belongs with his mother. Isla is unemployed and lacks a permanent residence. Isla is staying with a friend while she recovers from being poisoned, Sophia shot back, turning to the judge. Your Honor, I would like to call a witness who can attest to my client's stability and parental fitness. Proceed. Call your witness. The defense calls Dr. Ben Carter. Dr. Carter took the stand, his simple clothing and calm presence a sharp contrast to the expensive suits filling the room. Sophia led him through the final, terrifying weeks of the pregnancy. The unexplained illness, the premature labor, the high-risk birth, and the infant's struggle for life. And in your professional opinion, Dr. Carter, how did Isla handle this crisis? With incredible fortitude, Dr. Carter said, his voice strong. I've been a doctor for 20 years and have seen people break under far less stress. Isla was focused. She followed every medical directive. She fought for her son as her own health was collapsing. An unstable person would have fallen apart. She did not. And what have you seen in her interactions with her son since his birth? She is loving, responsive, and completely competent. That child is flourishing, Dr. Carter said, meeting the judge's eye. He is gaining weight faster than expected for a premature baby. He is hitting all his developmental targets. His voice became more forceful. He has bonded with his mother in the exact way a healthy newborn should. To take him from her would inflict serious trauma. I would stake my medical license on it. The Croft family lawyers attempted to undermine Dr. Carter during cross-examination. They noted he was a general practitioner, not a famous neonatologist. They implied his personal role in the case skewed his judgment. They suggested he was paid for his testimony. Dr. Carter calmly neutralized every attack. I was the one who ordered the toxicology screen that saved that baby's life. Her voice turned to ice. His mother nearly died giving birth to him. And you say I'm not fit? The legal team backed down. Next, Maya called a friend who confirmed Clara's devotion. A psychologist testified to her stability. The opposition looked nervous. We call Chloe Vance, their lawyer announced. Clara's heart sank. Chloe walked to the stand, her face a mask of regret. Did you have a relationship with Mr. Kensington? The lawyer asked. Yes, Chloe whispered, full of false shame. She found out 6 months ago. Her reaction? He prompted. Rage, Chloe said. At a charity gala, she lost control. She screamed and threw a glass. Security had to intervene. Objection! A complete fabrication, Maya yelled. The judge allowed it but reminded Chloe about the penalty for perjury. Her confidence wavered slightly. He called me, terrified, Chloe continued, crying. He said she threatened to ruin him. I'm afraid for that child. Maya stood, her expression cold. This gala was on December 10th, correct? Yes. Interesting, Maya said, holding up a passport. Because on that date, Miss Reyes was giving a speech at a conference in Berlin. Chloe's face went white. I must have the date wrong. You have more than the date wrong, Maya said. Are you aware you've just committed perjury? Objection! Their lawyer shouted. Were you coached by the Kensingtons to invent this story? Maya pressed. Chloe shattered, looking desperately at Liam's father, who offered no help. She looked at Clara, holding her son. A hint of remorse showed. I think I need my lawyer, she whispered. Move to strike the testimony, Maya said. Granted, the judge replied. Miss Vance, you will answer to the district attorney for this. The ruling came quickly. The petitioner's claim has no merit. The motion is denied. Clara almost collapsed with relief. However, the judge added, I am ordering a 90-day parental evaluation. The child stays with Miss Reyes, under observation. Cooperate fully. I couldn't leave her with nothing. I panicked, and I hid it from you. His voice fractured. I asked my mother to set up a fund for the child. She made it seem like a payoff. Hiding a secret heir to the Vance estate. He met her gaze, his shame raw and visible. Our legal team contained it, but the damage was done. The rumor was that the child was mine and that I'd bungled everything. The board never looked at me the same way again. Even my father doubted if I could run the company. He let out a harsh laugh. That's why our public image became my obsession. It was terror, not pride. The thought that mentors believed I'd abandoned my own child. Isabella absorbed the confession, a missing piece of her own reality clicking into place. Why hide this from me? She whispered. Because I was afraid. Julian's gaze was desperate. I was scared you would see me the same way they did, that you'd never trust me again. I haven't trusted you since yesterday. I know. I deserve that. He stood. Isabella, it was over with her before us. I love you. Only you. I tried to fix the mess I made, and failing has been my private torment. She recalled her own father, a man who lied without remorse. Was Julian simply more skilled at feigning regret? But she saw real anguish in his face, the tremor in his hands. Her father was never this broken. He was always cool and untouchable. He never looked weak because he never thought he was. This was different. This was genuine agony. I believe you, Isabella said softly. But my father lived a life of deceit. I won't do that. If there's more, tell me now. There's nothing else, I promise. Then we start over now. Total honesty, she demanded, her eyes locked on his. Can you do that? Yes, Julian breathed, his voice thick with relief. I promise. She nodded slowly. Their trust was cracked but not broken. Repair would be slow. All right, she finally said. We move on from this. He crossed the floor and gripped her hands like a lifeline. Thank you, he murmured, for listening, for giving us this. Don't make me sorry. I won't, I swear. They stood together in the morning light, starting a difficult path toward rebuilding their trust. Weeks later, Clara showed up. Isabella was in the nursery when the doorman's nervous call came through. There's a visitor for you, he said hesitantly. She insists it's urgent, but I wasn't sure you'd want to see her. Who is it? His awkward silence told her everything. Isabella wanted to say no, to turn away the woman who embodied Julian's betrayal. But the doorman's warning gave her pause. She seems terrified, he added quietly, and she's alone. Isabella glanced at the crib, a peaceful island in her chaotic new world. Let her come up, she decided. Keep a guard nearby. Clara arrived looking shattered, nothing like the confident woman from her file. She was obviously pregnant. Thank you, Clara rasped. I know I shouldn't be here after what I've done. You helped him lie to me. Yes, Clara's eyes welled up. I did, and I'm sorry, but that is not why I came today. Then why are you here? Clara glanced nervously down the hall before facing her again, her voice a frightened whisper. Because I think Genevieve Vance wants me dead. Isabella was stunned into silence. That was the one thing she had never expected to hear. What are you talking about? I mean the Vances, Julian's mother, Genevieve. Clara's composure shattered, her voice trembling. When the merger talks faltered, she blamed me, called me a problem to be managed. She held her belly. Julian called and warned me. He said if I spoke out, I'd disappear. He said it so calmly, like ordering lunch. Julian makes threats he doesn't keep. Maybe, Clara whispered, but his mother does. She told Isabella about a young architect who filed a complaint against Julian years ago. The entire record of her employment vanished after she took a settlement. A friend of mine found the old files. But the payout wasn't the end of it. The words tumbled from Clara's mouth. 2 months later, she was gone. A fatal slip on some ice during a winter storm. The official report said it was an accident. A cold dread filled Isabella. Are you saying Julian was involved? I can't prove it, but the Vances have immense power. Clara shook her head. I thought I was special. He told me he loved me, that you were just an obstacle, that our real life would start after the divorce. Her laugh was bitter. I was a fool. He played me. Now I'm carrying his son, and he still finds ways to intimidate me. Why come to me now? Because I have leverage. From her purse, Clara produced a flash drive. Emails, secret accounts, recordings, everything Julian uses to cover his tracks, including Genevieve's plans to protect him. Isabella took the drive. Why not go to the authorities? I was scared. I thought being part of his life gave me safety. Clara's voice broke. But I finally realized they would never protect me. I was just a loose end to be tied up, and then cut. Her eyes met Isabella's, filled with stark terror. I'm not asking for pity. I helped create this mess. But I'm a mother now. I'm scared for my baby just like you are for yours. She gestured to the drive. Everything you need to bring them down is on there. The hidden financials, the plans to ruin you. They had contingency plans in case this went public. What kind of plans? Clara hesitated, and her next words were chilling. They talked about staging an accident, something that looked random, untraceable. The fear in Isabella's gut turned to ice. They were going to kill me. They want you gone for good if necessary, Clara confirmed, wiping a tear. When Julian started making veiled threats to me, I knew it was real. What they would do to you, they'd do to me. Isabella stared at the drive. What do you want in return? Nothing, Clara said. I just need to disappear with my son before they decide I'm too dangerous. And I have to apologize for all of it, for believing Julian's lies, for helping him tear your life apart. She glanced at the nursery, her expression full of remorse. I told myself you deserved it. It was easier than facing what I was doing. A sob escaped her. I am so sorry, Isabella. Ava watched Isabella, the woman who had helped Ethan destroy their marriage. She expected rage, but only found pity. Here was another life ruined by the Davenport machine, a terrified mother protecting her son. The penthouse, Ava heard herself say. It's secure. You can stay there until we figure out how to use this. Isabella looked up, shocked. You're helping me? I'm helping your son, Ava stated firmly. He's as innocent as my child. He won't pay for his father's crimes. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just unlock that laptop and pray it's enough to burn them to the ground. The files on Ethan's old hard drive were a nightmare. Encrypted messages between him and his father discussed managing the Ava problem. Memos to fixers and shady lawyers were worded carefully but reeked of malice. Financial records led to offshore accounts, with payments matching dates when key witnesses disappeared. The worst part was the voice notes between Ethan and his mother, Catherine, planning a final solution if the divorce became too messy. We can take care of it, Catherine's calm voice said in one recording. Something clean, untraceable, a brake failure, a mugging gone wrong. People manage these things. And the baby? Ethan asked. The baby is a Davenport. He will, of course, stay with us after his mother's tragic accident. Accident? Ava repeated the word. Her life, a problem to be erased. Her lawyer, Daniel, sat beside her, his face grim. This is conspiracy to commit murder, he said. A literal plot. They're talking about your death like a hostile takeover. The issue is our next move. Ava closed the laptop, holding it tight. I can take it to the DA. That's a huge risk. The Davenports own half of this city. What if someone in that office tips them off? Daniel said. We have to be smart. Back it all up. Multiple cloud servers. Physical copies. We'll set up a dead man switch. If you're harmed, the files go to every major news outlet. If I'm harmed, a chill ran down Ava's spine. Do you think they'd actually do it? I think cornered people do brutal things, and the Davenports are about to lose everything, Daniel replied. The merger hearing is in 3 weeks. This kind of PR scandal would vaporize the deal. Their company would collapse. Their social status would be gone. Their entire dynasty is built on an image of power. For them, losing that is worse than death. So they would kill to protect it. Without a doubt. Ava glanced at the laptop. Such a simple device, with the power to ruin an empire. Then that's our plan, she said. Not just for the hearing. For everything. We leak every lie, every crime. We show the world what the Davenports really are. That's an enormous gamble. If they learn you're going public before you can... Then I move faster, Ava interrupted, standing up. I'm done being their victim. I'm through waiting for them to strike next. They left me emotionally broken. They tried to smear me to get my baby. Now they're planning my murder to protect their stock price. She looked at Daniel, her only true ally. I went through hell to save my child. I'll do it again, but this time, they're not winning. The confrontation happened 3 days before the data was scheduled to be released. Ava was leaving a meeting at Daniel's firm. Her son was safe at the condo with her sister. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across downtown Chicago. She was reviewing her testimony, picturing the cold look in Ethan's eyes. She didn't notice the black SUV that pulled up beside her. The first bump was minor. Annoyed, she pulled over, but a second car instantly boxed her in. The SUV's driver got out, moving with calm intent. For a moment, Ava was frozen. Then she saw him, walking toward her. He was a stranger, but he carried an aura of professional menace. "Mrs. Davenport," he said flatly, "we need a word." Ava's hand flew to her purse. She had to call Daniel. The police. Anyone. But the man was at her window, holding his own phone. It showed a live feed of her sister pushing her son's stroller in a nearby park. "I'd suggest you reconsider," he said coolly. "This can be very simple. You will come with me, sign some documents, and tell us your new living arrangements." "I don't understand." "Let's not pretend," Catherine said with a sneer. "Ethan has been funding your life. We know about the condo, the allowance. We just need to know where our grandson will be raised. If I go missing, all of this becomes public." Ah, the data leak. A desperate play. Catherine looked unimpressed. "So predictable. Which is why you won't vanish. We're going to have a reasonable chat. Then you'll sign this non-disclosure agreement." "Absolutely not." "You will." Her voice turned to steel. "Or we can explore other avenues. Your father's company, for example. So many building codes to violate. What a shame that would be." The threat against her family changed Ava's fear to ice-cold rage. "Touch my family," she whispered, her voice dangerously quiet. "And I will end you. I will end the entire Davenport legacy. I will tear down your empire and show everyone the rot it's built on." Catherine just laughed. Such brave words from a girl who has nothing. Brave words from a woman with nothing to lose. She met the older woman's gaze. "I already lost my career. I was forced out by the man who fathered my child." Her voice was like iron. "You think your threats mean anything to me? Your money is useless. I carried my son alone. I fought your lawyers alone. I took on your entire family in secret and secured my child's future." She smiled, a brittle, terrifying expression that gave the matriarch pause. "So, please, make a move. See what happens when that trust's details are made public. See how Chicago reacts when it learns the Davenports tried to silence the woman who can prove their patriarch was a criminal." The car suddenly felt claustrophobic. Catherine's grip on her purse was white-knuckled. Ava's heart pounded, but her face was stone. At last, Catherine stood. "This isn't over," she spat. "No," Ava agreed. "It's not. But when it is, you and your son will have nothing. I can promise you that." The black car sped away, disappearing into traffic. Ava slumped in her seat, a violent tremor shaking her. With trembling hands, she called the one person she could trust. "They found me," she said when Daniel answered. "At my building, with an NDA. They told me to disappear." "Are you okay?" "I am. Terrified. They knew everything, but I'm fine." She took a deep, shaky breath. "Daniel, they threatened my dad. They said they'd ruin my family. I'm sending a car. Come to my office now. No one will find you there." "It's not enough. They'll just keep coming." Ava stared out at the bustling street. "We do this tonight, before they can try again." "What are you proposing?" "I'm giving the Tribune everything. The drive, the voice notes, all of it." Her voice was rock solid. "They wanted a quiet war. I'm giving them a public execution. Let the whole city see the Davenports for who they are." "That's a huge gamble. Once it's released, you can't undo it. I don't want to undo it. I want to burn it all down." Ava's grip on her phone was tight. "They used their power to terrorize me for months. They tried to convince me I was losing my mind. Not anymore. Tonight, everyone learns the truth." There was a short pause. "My contact at the Tribune owes me big," Daniel said. "We can get this on the front page by morning. Do it." "Are you certain about this? There's no going back." Ava remembered Ethan's face when he told her she was unstable. She remembered the forged emails from his father, discrediting her. She saw Catherine's face, threatening her unborn child. I have never been more certain. The story broke at 5 a.m. It landed like a bombshell. The Chicago Tribune's website crashed. The city's elite circles imploded. The headline was a fatal blow. Davenport Empire built on lies, threats. The story revealed decades of corruption. Ava watched from Daniel's office as the truth spread. Scans of the offshore accounts showed illegal payoffs. Ethan's texts about how to manage Ava were there. Catherine was heard authorizing payments to fixers. Their own lawyers drafted plans to have her declared mentally incompetent. Pundits were in a frenzy. Legal experts listed the potential criminal charges. Financial analysts predicted the immediate collapse of Davenport Holdings. And at the center of it all was Ava's own story, which a top journalist helped her tell. The leaked blueprints, the public termination, the hospital stay where anxiety almost cost her the baby, his birth, the custody battle, the break-in. She detailed everything, each lie, each threat, each moment of courage. And Chicago paid attention. Before 9 a.m., the tag Sinclair Sham was viral. By noon, satellite trucks clogged the streets near Sinclair Plaza. By the closing bell, his company's stock was worthless. Donovan Sinclair issued a statement blaming a bitter ex-employee's lies. Authenticated bank transfers debunked it within an hour. His mother, Diana Sinclair, was greeted by federal agents at her charity gala. Her lawyers were powerless. And Donovan, in his glass-walled office, was put on a 72-hour hold after he shattered it, yelling that no court would ever shame him. But Clara's battle had just begun. The night before her testimony, Clara paced her small apartment. Owen slept soundly, the city a cold sparkle below. Tomorrow, she'd face them. She was due before the state commission at dawn, hoping her account would be enough. Mark found her gazing at the skyline at 3 a.m. "Nerves getting to you too?" he asked. When I shut my eyes, I see his expression, the way he looked when he fired me, like I was an inconvenience. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. What if they paint me as a liar? What if they claim the foundation plans are forgeries? What if he walks free and takes Owen from me? Mark stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Remember what you said when I worried his legal team would ruin us? That solid proof doesn't bend? Yeah, well, this is it. Tomorrow, it's your testimony against their reputation, your evidence against their influence, your resilience against his hubris. He squeezed her shoulder. You're not the naive architect he married. You're not the woman they tried to erase. You're a mother who fought for her son and exposed a crime. I don't feel like it. I'm absolutely petrified. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, Mark said with a faint smile. The bravest people are always the most scared. They just don't let it stop them. Clara leaned her head against him, borrowing his strength, his belief in her. You'll be in there the whole time. I'll be right behind you, I promise. They watched together as the sky over the city turned from black to gray. Clara then took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and prepared for the fight of her life. The proceedings started on a grim Wednesday, with rain lashing the windows of the hearing room. Clara was seated by 10:15. She chose a simple navy blue dress, her hair tied back. Owen was safe with Mark's wife and a security detail he'd hired. The lead investigator, Miss Reed, guided her through the sequence of events. Noticing the discrepancies in the Foundation's blueprints, Donovan's immediate hostility, the fabricated breach of contract he used to fire her, and her flight with the evidence, Clara spoke with calm clarity, letting the facts tell the story. She needed the commission to recognize the certainty in her voice and the honesty in her eyes. And what occurred after you were terminated by Mr. Sinclair's firm? Miss Reed inquired. I went into hiding. Mark arranged a safe place. I went into labor prematurely. The doctors attributed it to acute stress. They saved both of us. And your son? Owen was born that evening. He was tiny but strong, a fighter. The nurses called him their little fighter. Objection, Sinclair's counsel barked, rising. Her medical history has no bearing on this. Overruled, the chairman stated flatly. The context of her testimony makes it entirely relevant, Miss Reed went on. Miss Hayes, following your son's birth, did the harassment persist? Yes. Clara looked straight at the commission members. Donovan Sinclair's mother initiated a baseless custody action to seize my son using fraudulent psychological evaluations. When that was dismissed, they paid someone to break into my apartment. He threatened my infant unless I surrendered the original architectural plans that prove their family's fraud. Objection. This is baseless conjecture. It's verified fact. Miss Reed pointed to a monitor. We have the payment records, a signed affidavit, and digital forensics connecting this man to the Sinclair family's head of security for the past 15 years. The defense lawyer collapsed back into his chair, his face ashen. Miss Hayes, Miss Reed said, turning to her, why did you provide the blueprints to the media instead of approaching the authorities first? Clara was ready for this question. Because I was terrified, she said simply. The Sinclair dynasty practically owns Chicago real estate. Their money buys silence. Their influence is legendary. I saw them kill projects and ruin careers. They threatened me and my unborn son. I heard them discuss destroying my reputation as if it were a minor zoning issue. She spoke directly to the commission. I released those plans so the world would see the truth before they could bury it. I needed more witnesses than their money could buy off. Her voice became steel, and I needed Donovan and his mother to understand that I was done being afraid. You can't just bulldoze a person. The truth is more permanent than their skyscrapers and their power. The room was silent. Even Sinclair's team seemed stunned. Miss Reed nodded slightly. I have no more questions. Donovan's lawyer got up for cross-examination, looking like a man forced to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic. Miss Hayes, your marriage to my client was strained, wasn't it? Our marriage was strained because he is a pathological liar and a thief. Clara's voice was like ice. He isolated me from my family and my own firm. He monitored my spending. He switched my supplements with placebos to make me think I was losing my mind. When he found a new partner in crime, he tried to get rid of me. That's your interpretation. No, that's a statement of fact. Clara held his gaze. Your client is in this room because the evidence is irrefutable. Altered permits, offshore accounts, shell company deeds, and audio files. Argue all you like, counselor, but the digital trail is absolute. Donovan Sinclair tried to erase me, and he nearly succeeded. I only survived because my brother got me out of that house. The lawyer changed his approach. He implied she was emotionally volatile. He suggested the data was fabricated. He called the recordings out of context. Clara dismantled every claim with the cool precision of someone with nothing left to lose. He finally gave up. No further questions. Clara stepped down from the stand. She walked past Donovan without a look, past his parents, sitting like stone statues, past the reporters. She left that room with her head held high. She didn't look back. The commission deliberated for less than 3 hours. Clara was at the safe house when Mark called. She was in the nursery, rocking Owen, when her phone buzzed with the update. Referred for prosecution on all charges, Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. Bank fraud, conspiracy, intimidation of a witness. Every single recommendation stuck. Clara closed her eyes, absorbing the news. Prosecution. After all the terror and gaslighting, the facts had won. And his parents? Indictments are being drawn up for them too. The AG feels the case is airtight. His father is implicated in the fraud. His mother is being investigated for obstruction thanks to those recordings. The entire Sinclair real estate empire is collapsing, Clara. All of it. And Donovan's potential sentence? The hearing is next month, but the state is recommending 40 years. Given the evidence of premeditation and cruelty, Mark paused. He won't get out. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Clara looked at Owen sleeping peacefully in her arms, completely unaware of the storm he'd been born into. It's over, Clara whispered. Yeah. Mark's voice grew gentle. It's finally over. You did it, Clara. You won. After the call, Clara remained in the quiet room, just listening to her son breathe. She felt a sensation she thought she'd lost forever. Calm. Mark found her there moments later. He hesitated in the doorway, not wanting to disturb the peace, but she noticed him and smiled, waving him in. "I saw the press conference," Mark said quietly. "It's the lead story on every channel. I know. How are you holding up, for real?" Clara considered it. After surviving such a public ordeal, how did she feel? Empty, she confessed. Like I've been bracing against a hurricane for a year, and it finally just passed. Mark sat beside her, his gaze soft as he watched Owen. "So what comes next for you?" he asked. "I start over," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "First, I'm reopening my design studio. Then I'm finding us a new place. I'm going to raise my son and be the architect I was before Donovan Sinclair tried to tear me down. You know you can stay here," Mark offered. "This place is huge. There's plenty of room, and Owen has everything he needs." "Mark." Clara smiled, touching his arm. "Are you seriously asking me to move in with you and your wife?" He looked down, a rare moment of earnestness on his face. "I'm asking you to let us help. For a little while." His voice grew quiet. "These past few months, watching you navigate this, seeing your resolve, it's been incredible. Mom and Dad would have been so proud of you. It's a strange thought, I know, but I have it all the time. They would see the same strength in you that I do. A truly good person, someone worth standing with. Liam, I just can't. I see what you've endured. You deserve to heal. But know that I'm staying. This restaurant is my anchor. We're a team, if you want." Clara felt a warmth spread through her. Not sorrow, but gratitude, and a faint flicker of hope. "I'm not there yet," she breathed. "I don't know if I can ever let someone in like that. I understand, but I'm not leaving either." She looked around the cozy dining room, the shelter she'd found. "This feels real. You feel real. And for now, that might be all I need." "I can build on that," Liam said, his smile finally reaching his eyes. "Good." Clara kissed his cheek. "Now go check on your kitchen. You've ignored your precious sauces all afternoon waiting on me." Liam chuckled and stood. He paused by the kitchen door. "Grace would have respected you. I know it. I wish I could have met her. In a way, I think you have." He glanced around the room, at the baby monitor, at the woman who had survived a catastrophe. "I feel like she was watching this place, waiting for it to feel whole again." He left her with the afternoon light. 3 months after Marcus Thorne's empire crumbled, Isabella gave birth to a boy she called Benjamin. She picked a name with no connection to the Thorne dynasty, one meaning son of the right hand, a fresh start. She wanted his life to be free of the poison that undid his father. Clara met her in a quiet corner of the public garden a day later, her feelings a tangle of pity and muted rage for the woman who had been her rival. "He's beautiful," Clara said, watching the sleeping baby. "He has your eyes." Isabella's voice was hollow. "I hope that's the only part of him he gets from his father. Our children are not their fathers. Chloe isn't Marcus, and Benjamin won't be either. Not while you're his mother." Isabella looked at Clara, stunned. "How can you say that after everything I did? Because he used you too. He turned us into competitors in a game he'd already won. My wake-up call was a forwarded email. Yours was a deposition notice. I should have known. Maybe. But you told the truth. Your statement was everything. You spoke out against his partners. You helped make sure he can't ruin anyone else." Isabella gave a faint, weary smile. "That was brave, Clara. Truly. It felt like the bare minimum. Then let's call it a start." They sat on the park bench, two women linked by one man's deceit. Starting over. The Boston sun filtered through the leaves. Life continued. "I'm moving to Philadelphia next week," Isabella said. "My cousin has a small marketing firm there. I can begin again." "That sounds like the right decision. Will you?" Isabella hesitated. "Tell Chloe about Benjamin someday?" "They are half-siblings." Clara considered it. 2 children, innocent of their father's crimes, who deserved a chance at a normal life. "When they're old enough to process it," she said finally. "When they can decide what that connection means. Yes, I'll tell her she has a brother. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. For everything. For not destroying me when you had every chance to. That's just being a human being. But I wasn't. I was his mistress. You were never the core issue, Isabella. You were just another one of Marcus Thorne's acquisitions. Clara reached out, her hand gently touching Isabella's. We may not be friends, but our children connect us, and so does getting through this. That has to count for something. Isabella nodded, choked up. Clara stood. Take care of yourself, Isabella, and give Benjamin a childhood full of the safety and love that Marcus denied both our children. I will. I swear it. Clara walked out into the bright afternoon. The city hadn't stopped, just because her life had shattered. She found Liam in his office, sketching out a new menu on a whiteboard. He turned, his smile warm and comforting. How did it go? She's coping. Terrified, but coping. Clara collapsed into a chair. She's relocating to Philly. A clean slate. Probable for the best. I agree. Clara paused. She asked if I would tell Chloe about her son someday. What did you decide? I said I would. The kids aren't to blame for their father or his choices. Liam nodded. Grace would have said the same thing. You mention her often. Only with the deepest respect, he smiled. You two are nothing alike. She was like a carefully composed piece of music. You're different. Forged in betrayal, and tougher than you know. Is that a compliment? It's the truth. And yes, a heartfelt one. Liam came around the desk and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. I loved Grace with my entire being. When I lost her, I thought that part of my story was over for good. I assumed I would just haunt this restaurant with her memory. But lately, I'm starting to hope she was right about what happens next. Not for me, but so she could see this. His voice was thick with emotion. I want her to know I found a reason to live again, that her restaurant finally feels like home. Liam, I'm not asking for anything, she said, her own hands tightening on his. I know you need to heal, but you need to see my side. When I look at you, I don't see a widow. I see an incredible woman who clawed her way back. And I'm grateful every day that you stumbled into my restaurant that day. Clara felt a familiar sting in her eyes, a mix of thanks, fear, and fragile hope. I'm so terrified, she admitted, afraid to depend on anyone, afraid my judgment is broken forever. I know, she took a shaky breath, but I am so done with being scared, done with Marcus's ghost running my life. I want to build something real, Liam. I don't know how to start, so we'll learn how, together. Liam held her hands tighter. No pressure. Just two people who found a safe harbor in a hurricane and decided to walk into the sun together. Clara laughed, tears streaming down her face. That was almost poetic. I've been getting coaching, he admitted with a smile. My son says I need to be more charming if I'm going to win you over. He has strong opinions about it. Leo wants us to get together. Leo has wanted us to get together since about 2 days after you first walked in. His hints are about as delicate as a sledgehammer. I think his text from last night was, Dad, for the love of everything, just ask her out. This is painful to watch. Clara's laugh was deeper now, a sound that finally felt free. Well, she said, with a smile appearing, I guess we shouldn't make Leo wait any longer. Definitely not. The kid would hold it over me forever. She closed the space between them and kissed him. It was soft at first, a gentle question. It became a confirmation as he kissed her back. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. So, what's our next move? She asked. Now, we follow your lead. We build it, together. Clara stood up, taking his hand. But before that, I believe your sister mentioned something about fresh pasta being ready, and I'm suddenly ravenous. Always the practical one. Someone has to be. They walked toward the kitchen, holding hands. Outside the window, the lights of Boston were beginning to sparkle in the twilight. The restaurant finally felt like a home. It was filled with light, warmth, and the gentle sounds of Chloe's breathing from the baby monitor. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Life rarely offered those, but it was a new chapter, a real one, founded on honesty and the hard-won lessons of surviving deceit. And for Clara Vance, that was better than any fantasy. The anniversary dinner was Liam's idea. 1 year to the day since Clara had run from her Beacon Hill townhouse and found refuge in his restaurant. 1 year since their worlds had collided and changed completely. It was a day that deserved to be marked. The small, private dining room had never looked so inviting. Simple floral arrangements stood against exposed brick walls. A single large table was set for their closest friends. Twinkling lights were strung across the ceiling, casting a soft glow. Clara stood by the window, observing her new reality. Kate, her attorney, was chatting with one of Liam's suppliers, no doubt planning a pro bono case. Dr. Anya, her therapist, was laughing with a small group. Liam's son had brought a couple of friends from his soccer team, their youthful energy a sharp contrast to the quiet battles of the past year. Chloe made her way across the floor with intense focus. At 14 months, she had a will that Clara recognized as her own. "Mama?" Chloe said, wrapping her arms around Clara's leg. "Cake?" "Soon, my love. We need to wait for our guests. Cake now." Clara laughed and picked her up. "You are my child, through and through. She is definitely her mother's daughter." Liam joined them with 2 glasses of elderflower pressum. "A will that powerful has to be inherited. Are you suggesting I'm difficult? I'm suggesting you're tenacious. It's one of your best traits." He kissed her and handed her a glass. "To 1 year. To 1 year." Clara touched her glass to his, and to the next one. They had been a couple for 6 months, building something solid from the ruins of their pasts. It wasn't easy. For Clara, trusting again was a slow process. But they were figuring it out, one day at a time. The quiet, consistent acts of kindness were creating a foundation stronger than anything either of them had ever had. Liam's sister emerged from the kitchen, beaming with satisfaction at the evening she had helped him create. With the main course cleared, Chloe whispered, "Don't you think it's time for a speech?" "A speech?" Olivia's heart skipped. "I have nothing prepared. You don't need notes, just your heart," she said, lifting a dozing Sophie from Olivia's lap. "I've got our girl. You go." Before Olivia could protest, Ethan was leading her toward the head of the long vineyard table. The warm chatter died down as their friends turned to her with encouraging smiles. She scanned the faces of her newfound family, contrasting them with the sterile, glass-walled penthouse overlooking the bay where her old life had imploded. Taking a deep breath, she began. "A little over a year ago, my entire world fell apart. The table went silent. I was sitting on the floor of my home office, staring at an email on my husband's tablet. It wasn't the hidden offshore funds that broke me. It was the forwarded invoice from a designer, detailing millions in furnishings for a waterfront condo I didn't know he owned. He was building a completely separate life." She glanced up, finding Ethan's steady gaze. "I had lost everything I thought was real. And then, a man who owned a local vineyard saw me breaking down in a coffee shop and offered me a quiet place to think. When my daughter arrived 2 days later, she was born into a world where a whole community was already waiting to love her." Olivia's voice grew stronger. "This past year has redefined my entire world. I've learned that family isn't about bloodlines. It's about the people who show up for you. I've learned that strength isn't about being unbreakable, but about how you piece yourself back together. And I now understand that your darkest hour can be the beginning of something real, if you have the courage to rebuild." Her gaze connected with Ethan's, who was watching with glistening eyes. "I also learned that true love isn't a storybook. It's not perfect. It's complicated and frightening, and you might get hurt, but it's the reason for nights like this. Surrounded by people who chose to be here, in a future I never dreamed of, a life that felt impossible just 12 months ago." She raised her glass. "So here's to sprawling vineyards, to strangers who become your sanctuary, to babies who become your compass, and to every one of you who helped me escape a gilded cage and find the first real home I've ever known." To Olivia. The toast was echoed by dozens of clinking glasses. She stepped down and walked directly into Ethan's embrace. "That was beautiful," he murmured against her hair. "It was just the truth." "I know," he said, pulling back. I have something for you. I couldn't hold on to it any longer. He reached inside his coat pocket and pulled out a small, cloth-wrapped object. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Hey now, don't get ahead of yourself, Ethan said gently. It's not what you're thinking. He carefully unwrapped it. Inside, instead of a ring, was an antique, leather-bound book of poetry, its pages worn with time. It was my grandfather's, he explained. He was a writer. He carried this everywhere. After he died, I put it away. It was too hard to look at. He took Olivia's hand. I'm not asking you for forever today. I know how complicated that word feels. But I want you to have this, to hold a piece of my family's story while we begin to write our own. Olivia gazed at the little book, a relic of a past love and a symbol of a new one taking root. It connected the grandfather he'd lost, the woman she used to be, and the man who was healing them both. Are you sure? She whispered. It feels like a treasure. My mother insisted, Ethan said with a smile. She said her father would have adored you. She also joked she'd cork all my best vintages if I got cold feet. Olivia laughed, a single happy tear tracing a path down her cheek. Well then, I'd be honored. Of course. Ethan placed the book in her hands. Its worn leather felt warm and solid. I love you, Olivia said, the words feeling simple and true. I love you, Ethan. Her voice was steady. I love your amazing mother, your sister, and this beautiful, thriving vineyard. I love this story that we're creating together. I love you too, he replied, kissing her tenderly. You taught me what love is supposed to feel like. I'm grateful for you every single day. They stood there in the glow of the party, wrapped in the warmth of the family they had built. The night alive with promise. Her daughter's cheerful gurgle drifted over from a nearby chair, where Chloe was making her laugh, and Olivia, who had discovered a devastating lie in a perfect penthouse and rebuilt her life from the ashes, knew without a doubt that she was finally home.